Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. Today I'd like to give praise to a decision made yesterday by the Queensland Labor government. It's not common, obviously, to praise other political parties, but I think it is worthwhile giving credit where credit is due. And yesterday the Queensland government issued an environmental authority for the Adani Carmichael coal mine in the Galilee Basin. It's good news for Central and North Queensland because these areas desperately need jobs and investment projects to get going. The project now, the Adani Carmichael coal mine, has met all environmental approvals necessary at the state and federal level. The federal environmental approvals were concluded last year, and there's now no more excuse. There's no excuse to not issue this particular mine with a mining licence that's controlled by the Queensland government. That's the next step now, to issue that mining licence. But that next step does no longer rely on any need for further environmental investigation or further environmental approvals. This particular mine is in a new area. It's in a largely unpopulated and undeveloped area of our country. Indeed, the closest town is more than 100 kilometres away, and it's not a large town itself in any case at Alpha. Traditionally, or almost ever since Europeans moved into the area, it's been used for grazing cattle, and it's not particularly productive land. There's no cropping in the area, and it's probably the perfect place, if you like, Mr Acting Deputy President, for a coal mine. Coal mines do disrupt the environment. That's why they do require lots of environmental regulation. But of course we need to have jobs, we need to have a mining industry to keep paying for all the services we have in this country. We need to provide good, well-paying jobs for Australian men and women who may not want to go to university, or who may not want to come down and sit behind a desk all day and may want to work outside and do something with their hands. And the mining industry does provide that to those people, and we need to make sure we continue to have a vibrant and productive mining industry to have a productive and prosperous economy and society. This project will open up this particular Galilee Basin. It'll be the first mine in that area. There's enormous amounts of coal, good quality thermal coal in this region. It's more environmentally friendly than other sources of coal, particularly in other countries such as Indonesia. It's something we should get behind to try and open it up. Obviously, though, being the first mover in multi-billion-dollar projects like this takes a lot of risk. And this particular project amounts to a $16 billion investment. So it is a hard decision for any business to make such a commitment, an upfront commitment, particularly when they'll be the first one in the region, they'll be the first one having to pay for the rail line themselves, they'll be the first one having to pay for the upgrades to the ports without being able to share those costs with any other miners, at least in the short term. This project, however, while as attractive and welcome it is to this region, to bring development and to bring some investment to this region, I must say that the way that these particular investors have been treated by our regulatory system is underwhelming and could be improved. The Adani proponent, who the corp company behind this mine, initially applied for approval with the Federal Department on the 22nd of October 2010, and I believe they applied with the state government at a similar time frame. It has now been 1,930 days since the 22nd of October 2010, 1,930 days. And today we celebrate finally the conclusion of the regulatory approval process for the Adani coal mine. A 1,930 day process. What country in the world would take more than 1,900 days to say yes or no to a $16 billion project? This is a massive project. This is a third the size of the NBN in one small part of our country, an undeveloped part of our country. It can open up something, create something new on the frontiers of our nation, have more people moving there and not just stacking up people in Sydney and Melbourne and to a lesser extent Brisbane. But we've taken nearly 2,000 days to say, yes, we want you to come here and spend $16 billion. Now, obviously, the patience of Adani has been tested over that period, and there's no guarantee now that they will necessarily proceed with the investment. They've spent a substantial sum of money already, but it's obviously a very big decision to spend $16 billion. And the coal market is very different than it was back in 2010. If we'd made the decision within 2 or 3 years, perhaps, it still would have been a very attractive coal market and coal price, and most likely the project would have proceeded. It's a very different decision to make. It's one that hopefully still will get a positive decision, but it's a lengthy process. And part of those delays have been federal environmental laws. Part of those delays have been changes of mind by the Queensland government about what it would do. They were going to dump the spoil from dredging the port offshore originally. Then it was going to come onshore, and then the Queensland Labor government promised at the last election that no, they wanted to move it, not put it onshore near these Kelly Valley wetlands, put it somewhere else. I just want to slightly sidetrack on the Kelly Valley wetlands because I've got to know them very well. They sound pristine, they sound wonderful, they sound like something we'd like to protect, but in fact the Kelly Valley wetlands are an artificially man-made created wetlands. They were made in the 1950s by locals who wanted to shoot ducks. They wanted to shoot ducks, so they built a little bit of a bund wall at Abbott Point there, and that helped stop the water from flowing out to the ocean, create a bit of a swampy wetland area, attracted ducks, and they shot them. Now, fortunately for the ducks, they're no longer shot. Doesn't happen anymore. But apparently, according to the Greens and according to the Queensland Labor government last year, these wetlands are so important to protect. I mean, this is absurd in my mind that we protect a man-made wetland created for duck shooting over and above a $16 billion project that can create 10,000 jobs. It's kind of Kafkaesque. It's just, you just couldn't write this stuff and be believed. But we do have an opportunity now to proceed, and to proceed we need this mining licence to be issued. And I hope that the Queensland Government will do this and take this next step, because I have been heartened by some of the comments from the Minister for Mines in Queensland, Mr Anthony Lynham. He has said last year, I couldn't agree with him more, that everybody deserves their day in court, they just don't deserve 4 years in court. He's absolutely spot on there. Indeed, actually, these green activists have had 5 years in court, and there still are some court cases going on. But those court cases will not prevent the Queensland Labor government from issuing a mining licence, and they should get on with the job now and issue that licence as soon as possible, so we can start restoring some of the investor confidence in this nation, and show people that we are actually open for business. And while we do have very strong and proper environmental laws in this country, that we're not going to be absurdly creating the situation again where we take nearly 2,000 days to make an assessment of those environmental laws and regulations. Now, I make the point that there are still groups in the country that are opposing this project. As I say, the Queensland Labor government seem on side, certainly the coalition want to see it get ahead. Obviously, the Greens are never going to support a coal mine. They don't believe in any coal mining in the country. They would bankrupt our nation if they were ever in charge. Now, they support these strong environmental laws. They've voted for them in the past. They've argued for them in the past. We've got very strong laws in our country, and we should have strong laws in our country to protect the environment. But the problem with the Greens is they support these laws, and then when the umpire makes a decision, duly considered decision under these laws, they then turn around and say, no, we don't agree with that. We still want to ban the coal mine, because for the Greens, this is not about protecting the environment, it's about stopping a coal mine. It's not about protecting threatened species or native vegetation or the Kelly Valley wetlands, which they never would have heard of before this process. It's all about stopping a coal mine. It's all about stopping jobs in the mining industry, because they don't want any coal mining. They don't want any coal mining. And I think the Greens need to be asked why they're disputing the umpires' decisions, the umpires that they've argued before, people like the independent expert scientific panel, which they argued for in the Green Labor government, and they got established, and that committee has said this project can go ahead, and then they turn around and disagree with that umpire. Well, they need to be held to account for that, and they need to be asked, well, if you don't support this coal mine, where would you support a coal mine? Where do you think we're going to get our energy needs to provide for not just this country, but for the entire world? Where do you think we're going to get the high-quality coal we need to reduce carbon emissions in other countries? Because India are still going to build coal-fired power stations. They're not going to care where the coal comes from. They're not going to say, oh damn, we can't get that coal from central Queensland, we're going to not build these power stations. They're going to get them from Indonesia, and the ash content of the coal in Indonesia is much, much higher, which will be much, much worse for carbon emissions, which will be much, much worse for climate change. But the Greens don't want to listen to those facts. They just don't like coal mining. They are ideological about it. They are not reasonable about it. And I call now on the Queensland government to not listen to the Greens, but listen to the people of Central and North Queensland who want jobs.